We finally have some good news on the offensive line because Mekhi Becton was back in practice on Tuesday, which is monumental for the Chargers offense.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Behold, Daniel, the Chargers version of the mountain has finally returned to practice. The big ticket, Mekhi Becton, is back, and not a moment too soon. His involvement and participation in practice is huge, especially for the prospects of a already maligned Chargers offensive line. And speaking of that offensive line, I think what we've seen and what we have not seen, I think we have to be a little bit more critical of the Chargers coaching staff on the offensive line. And also, Taylor Heinicke was held out of practice. Could that possibly mean that he is getting traded somewhere else?
I mean, this is how it happened for him last year when he got traded to the Chargers. And if it isn't, why, they absolutely should be trying to trade him. But you have to start with the big ticket item of the day, and that is the big ticket, Mekhi Becton being back at practice. And I think this is just such great news, specifically because we just had no idea, right? Like, this is the first time in over 3 weeks that he's been out at practice doing individual drills. And it's just, all we heard was something very minor, an abundance of caution, a projected starter, not putting things in concrete. So to see him back on the field as really the one major addition, probably the biggest Chargers free agent addition of this offseason, back in the fold, David, is just so important and such a great time because I think he just helps their offense in so many levels and also just gives you one less question mark to be thinking about there.
Yep, as Daniel Popper, the Chargers beat writer for The Athletic, so eloquently put it and reminded us every single day since, he has not been in practice since July the 28th. And so to have him finally back in practice nearly a month after being out with this undisclosed injury, it is incredible news to get him back out there. His presence, especially on that right side now that you have to take Joe Alt and move him back over to the left side, I think it just gives you that feeling like, all right, I still have a dominant presence on that right side that I can still get some business done with. Because, hey, Mekhi Becton last year, that switch to guard, it was hand in glove. It was a perfect fit for his size, for his physicality, for the type of nature and the way that he plays football. That's still going to be coming to the right side of that Chargers offensive line. And just some good news after everything that has happened with Rashawn Slater and the season-ending injury that occurred. To get him back in the fold, I think is just really exciting, and I think that's evidenced by him and Joe Alt jumping up in the air and kind of hitting shoulders, according to what Daniel Popper said in his report. Love that. He said spirits were very high with Mekhi Becton returning to practice.
Yeah, and that's a group that really needed those vibes, and that's what he's seen like as a really all-time kind of vibes guy. If you watch the Justin Herbert mic'd up, you see him banging on his shoulder pads and saying like, hey, I hope you remind yourself every day that you're Justin effing Herbert and you're amazing and all of those things. Like, I think that gives you like a little bit of insight into how good of a guy he is in that locker room and how much that locker room needed him back. Greg Roman said he's a great physical presence to the group, big and physical presence too. Very literally, also Daniel Popper saying, Bradley Bozeman was trying to pull some, WWE moves on him out there. Seems like all the guys are really glad to have him back. But just as far as like an on the field impact standpoint, like you have, like you said, a guy that you can kind of run behind on each side now with Joe Alt at left tackle and now Mekhi Becton at right guard. But maybe even more importantly, being able to get that interior push. I mean, for what all of the kind of warts are for Bradley Bozeman and Zion Johnson, both those guys are decent to above average run blockers. And now you get a physical presence that can actually move the needle and move the pile for you as far as just yards before contact and getting some push and letting these running backs get a running start into these runs. So I think it's just big from that standpoint. Now the biggest question remains, David, is just, yes, he's back to practice. He is still only doing individual drills. He's not in team drills. But now it's just, will he be back for week 1?
And if, what the Chargers offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, has said, it seems like there's some optimism. There's some reason for optimism. He said he's working his way through it, onwards and upwards. Whatever time we have, we will use it. And I think he'll be good to go. And maybe that might have been a little bit of a slip of the tongue, because we know that the Chargers do not want to give anybody any information on injuries at all. But, I think Greg Roman's a little bit looser with it than Coach Harbaugh is. You ask Coach Harbaugh about any type of injuries or any type of timelines, he's working through something, and you'll see him when he's back and he's ready. So I think that's encouraging. That gives me a little bit of hope, a little bit of excitement that he's going to be out there and ready, because it's so crucially important that he's ready for this week 1 matchup against one of the best interior pass rushers in the history of the NFL. Of course, we're talking about Chris Jones of the Kansas City Chiefs. You got to have all hands on deck, and you want to have a giant card that you're able to put on that offensive line, of course, with Mekhi Becton.
Yeah, and that was one of the Chargers' big emphasis this offseason, is just getting larger in the trenches, and there is no one larger than Mekhi Becton.
Literally.
Joe Alt said that, he makes Joe Alt feel small, who's 6'9". But I think it'll be about, how quickly can he get up to speed, remembering that this is his first year in a new offense, and Greg Roman said it's been critical, him being in walkthroughs, him being able to go and learn all about the offense, even if he wasn't able to physically be out there doing it at full speed. Being in the walkthroughs to be able to go through all that stuff has been big. And he said, whatever time we have, we will use it, like you said, and they're going to need to, and this is where Ben Herbert's going to have to kind of earn that check a little bit. But I think that this shouldn't kind of sway you from the issue either, though, that even with his return, that the Chargers still desperately need to add to this offensive line. I mean, you only have to go back to the last game to see kind of just how unable the Chargers backups were to really get anything going. And I think that's the one thing you don't want in these kind of games, is just for your offensive line to completely derail the offense and not give you a chance to evaluate players, which it felt like we weren't able to do in that last game, with especially the running backs. But I mean, right now you're talking about the main tackles on this roster being Corey Stewart, Ryan Nelson, and David Sharp, outside of the obvious starters and Pipkins and Joe Alt. I mean, also on the inside, Carson Barnhart, Nash Jones, Branson Taylor. Like, there's just nothing there that feels good. None of those guys really feel like NFL players. I think Popper probably said it best for me. It's like, it feels like there's 7 offensive linemen on this team that are NFL players, and that's the starting 5, Jamari Sawyer and Andre James, and that's pretty much it. So the emphasis for this team and the impotence on this front office has to be, go and add more to what you have now.
Yeah, they should be very much scouring the waiver wires as we get close here to the Chargers and every other NFL team having to cut the roster down to 53. I expect them to be very, very, very busy on that front. And also, there's another offensive lineman that's taken meetings that I think the Chargers should be paying attention to. And to me, that is Dalton Risner. I think Dalton Risner is a quality guard. 830 pass blocking snaps the last 2 seasons, 0 sacks, only 46 pressures combined. The only little downside there, he's only played in 20 of a possible 34 games the last couple of seasons. Obviously, there's always reasons why players are still available at this point in the offseason, but I still feel like this guy's an upgrade over who they have on the interior, and the Chargers at the very least should bring him in and talk to him and work him out.
Yeah, I totally understand that, especially because you're talking kind of about a reserve guard position for him. So it'll be interesting, depending on, what these other teams are offering, a potential to start or whatever the case may be as far as the role goes. If he's willing to be a reserve offensive lineman, then you should be very interested in it, because since the Chargers lost Rashawn Slater, they have not made a meaningful move. They could also try to trade for somebody, someone's backup, whatever it is. But I think if that is going to happen, you're looking at the 2027 draft, especially with only 6 picks next year. Hard to imagine one of those picks gets moved at this point. So, especially with no compensatory picks coming in. But at a certain point, the part of the problem is the Chargers not being able to get more out of the guys they have. And for the guys they already have they gotten better under Mike Devlin and company in the offensive line coaching room? It does not feel like they have. And I think that is probably something we don't talk about enough. So we're getting into that and much more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me, David, and the Locked On Chargers podcast are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. It's so funny, I played my first ever fantasy football season on Yahoo, and it was the year that Adrian Peterson was suspended the entire season, and I took him with my first overall pick. But me and my friends have made our way back to Yahoo Fantasy, especially because of all the great stuff they have going on, because to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped the Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's only one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in the head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. There is something that has to be talked about with this offensive line room, just because even with the depth, the perceived depth that they had going into the season, obviously when you lose two starters and both those guys are in the starting lineup, and Jamari Sawyer and Trey Pipkins, obviously now Mekhi Becton's back, but it shines a light on how quickly that depth can be, can evaporate basically, right? And what you have behind those guys being even more important. And I do think that one of the big things that we hope for under a Greg Roman offense with a Jim Harbaugh-led team was that the coaching around the board, all around this team was going to be much better, especially with the offensive line. Because, there was a year where Greg Roman had an offensive line that every single one of the guys made a Pro Bowl in some way, either an alternate or a starting Pro Bowl player. This is a team that's always been able to run the football, a team that's always been able to find good offensive linemen under Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh specifically. They talk about it being the tip of the spear. They drafted Joe Alt 5th overall, and that way they've added some resources to it. But I think the biggest problem, David, and maybe one we haven't talked about enough, is the guys they already had not getting better in the case of, Zion Johnson, in the case of the version of Jamari Sawyer we saw last year, and trying to make Trey Pipkins into a guard. What we saw last year with Bradley Bozeman coming back to Greg Roman's offense and looking worse than he did the last time he was in it, even with this, Mike Devlin coaching staff, even with Nick Hardwick coming in to be the assistant kind of centers coach, basically, it hasn't been good enough. And that is something that, yes, you can talk about the players and the resources that they put into it, but I also think there has to be some accountability for this offensive line needing to get more, needing these players to improve in 2025.
Yeah, outside of guys that we already know are high-quality football players like Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, I don't know how you can look at anybody on that offensive line with this new administration that's been in place and say unequivocally that they have improved as an offensive lineman. The numbers certainly don't support that. And the eye test also doesn't support that either. Some of the same issues that these guys were dealing with last year, this seems like they're still there and they're still very prevalent, and the Chargers have to really take some accountability on that side of the coaching staff with Mike Devlin, who has been an offensive line coach for many, many, many years, right? The production and the growth, it doesn't stop at the NFL level. I've said it many, many times, and I will continue to say it. You will still improve, or you should still be improving as a player. The coaching is supposed to be the best in the world at this level, as are the athletes, the best in the world. So the coaches have to make sure that they're doing everything they can to really put these guys in positions to have the most success. And looking at some of the decisions that they've made, trying to, maybe put a square peg into a round hole has not really fit with some of the decisions they made, trying to move people in positions that they're probably not really designed for, like Trey Pipkins going from tackle to guard. Now they're moving him back to tackle. And even before, we knew about Joe Alt going over to the left side, that was already going to be the plan. They tried it and it failed. I think there is some accountability that needs to be had here.
I just think that you have to be better at being able to just kind of get a baseline level out of these players. I think with these backups, Like, yeah, you have a bunch of undrafted guys out there. You have 2 undrafted guys in Carson Barnhart from last year and then Corey Stewart from this year. You have a UFL player in Ryan Nelson. You have a guy signed off the street in David Sharp. There's just like, it's hard to blame them, but at the same time, every team is dealing with that. Every team's third string at this point is made up primarily of undrafted free agents or practice squad guys from the year before. And those other teams are able to not have their offenses totally derailed. Like, you have to at least get a baseline level, and also, just not being able to get more out of, whoever, Branson Taylor as a rookie in his first year at guard, whatever the case is, or, Brian Nelson and all of these guys to just get like something that's not just totally atrocious. Like, that's all you're really asking for with those guys, let alone being able to do what the Ravens were able to do in Joe Ortiz's time there, which is find mid-round picks, find guys, that weren't seen to be great, players, and getting serviceable play or even more than that from them. And that hasn't happened so far. But another development per Greg Roman is that Jamari Sawyer is the swing tackle. He didn't seem super confident about it when he said it, but it is an interesting development here because, like I said, the Chargers have not added anyone since Rashawn Slater has been injured, except for David Sharp, who doesn't look like an NFL player, even if he has, 6 starts under his belt in his career. And I do think that David, it's like, okay, well, maybe Jamari Sawyer's best season was him as a rookie at left tackle, but at the same time, it kind of just feels like, okay, but if he does go out, right, or if, say, Trey Pipkins goes out, and then you're going to move Joe Alt back to right tackle and then put Jamar, like, it's just a lot of shuffling. I would think, hopefully, there's still another move on the horizon, but right now it feels like Jamari Sawyer is basically the backup to every position outside of center on this offensive line.
I mean, he's a very valuable guy, but I think for Jamari Sawyer, it's got to be uncomfortable, right? Having to just jump from position to position to try to have to, be able to really have to adjust on the fly and have to learn and be able to be okay with a new challenge happening very, very quickly. That's really what's happening for him. It's like, okay, I'm playing guard. I'm starting at guard right now, but looks like Mekhi Becton's going to be back. And okay, well, now I guess the coaches are saying I'm the best swing tackle. And yeah, I think probably some of the best football that we've seen from Jamari Sawyer was at left tackle in his rookie season. So it's good to see that he has some of that versatility. And also he did some good work getting, slimming down, getting in better shape, being able to move and be a little more agile, which is going to help him be a better football player. But the musical chairs is crazy for him having to go from guard to tackle and just all over the place. Hopefully he's up for the challenge. At least we know he has some quality play at tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it also just kind of shines a light on how razor thin you are there. If he is your main primary backup, as a guy that, hasn't played at a high level maybe since he was a rookie. Now, all of those, late weight loss and all that stuff should be helping him even more at tackle. He did play 12 snaps against the Saints and played pretty well playing left tackle. But it's a lot of musical chairs. It's a lot to kind of ask of a guy to be really good at all of these different spots and be ready to kind of go at a moment's notice. And I think it's just, even with him potentially, maybe he is an okay swing tackle because you're going to move him and put him in left tackle where he's played before, but it still feels like you need more there, even with him saying that. But let's get to one more note we got, which was Branson Taylor, according to Daniel Popper, has been back at tackle. He was drafted, he was a college tackle, and they said right off the get-go, he is going to be a guard. We see him as a guard at the next level. And, after 2 preseason games for him, he's already back playing tackle. And not only that, according to Daniel Popper, it's like they're doing like 1 snap he's at left tackle and then 1 snap he's at right tackle. Like, it just seems really funky. And David, they're saying, Greg Roman's saying it's not because Rashawn Slater's injured and we're desperate, but it feels like it's because Rashawn Slater got injured and they're a little bit desperate to see what they have.
Yeah, it definitely does seem that way. After playing 45 snaps left guard and 24 at right guard, they said, all right, we're done with that experiment. And also it's probably just, out of what actually just needed to happen, right? This is a natural tackle here. And he said, that's probably his most natural position. We want to kind of build that guard tackle flex with him, which we've heard that for years and
How many
years
failed
and years.
tackles moved to guard have we seen, David? How many? Jordan McFadden, Brandon Hymus, Jamari Sawyer, Trey Pipkins. I mean, there's so many dudes.
Really, none of them worked out.
Yeah, we'll just move him. We'll just move him into guard, and then they'll play 5. Forrest Lamp was another. He was a left tackle in college too. But yeah, we've seen that them say that so many times, man. And like, I don't know if I'll ever
Just a
be able to
broken
fully
record,
trust
man.
it.
Just a broken
Well, I
record.
mean, the other thing about Branson Taylor is he put up a pretty hilarious 0.9 pass blocking grade.
Yeah, I had
in the
to
last
triple,
game.
quadruple check that one. I was like, there's no way that's real.
And he didn't have the lowest score amongst guards on his team because Carson Barnhart put up a 0.0 pass blocking grade in the last game. So you would think there's absolutely no way in American football that somebody could get worse than a 0.9 Pro Football Focus pass blocking grade, and you would be wrong. But that's not just them, right? To be fair, like Nash Jones ranks 87th out of 93 guards in pass blocking. Carson Barnhart 84th out of 93. Branson Taylor and Ryan Nelson, their tackle and guard, were second and fourth worst pass blocking grades out amongst all offensive linemen. Over 230 offensive linemen, they ranked second and fourth worst, respectively. Like, it's just really bad behind the starters that are out there right now, and it's just almost unplayable. But we still have more to get into, including why is Taylor Heinicke sitting out? Because if this was baseball and they're sitting him out, he would 100% be on a plane to his next team. Could the Chargers be trying to trade for him away? If they aren't trying to trade him away, they absolutely should be. We're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last second to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's a game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. It's really what the one thing I do. If I get a night off of the podcast, and you know it's your team every day, we're always here. If I get a night off, the first thing I'm doing is opening up my Gametime app and seeing what the prices are for the Padre game. There's always great prices, especially when you're doing it last minute. And the great thing is with the money you save on the tickets, you can splurge on the great food they have there, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple, and the prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Did we still want to get to the rest of our practice notes? And a lot of it centered around the very weird situation going on with Taylor Heinicke. I don't necessarily understand it. And I want to be a little bit careful about how we approach it because he did miss practices early on and we never really got an explanation from it. No one ever told us if he was injured or anything early on. It seemed like a personal thing. I don't want to be touching on something like that. But this is a very, very weird situation for someone who, in his offensive coordinator's own words, is still in the backup quarterback conversation and the backup quarterback, battle. And the offensive coordinator is telling you, oh, was Taylor Heinicke not out there in team drills today? Very weird situation. But thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure you guys check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast with Vinny Iyer and Michelle Madjuk. Listen every day to prep for your fantasy draft and become the most informed manager so you can take your home league's trophy this season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts from or on. But weird situation. Taylor Heinicke did not take any team reps. So we always talk about individuals and team drills, right? Team drills are when the teams are playing against each other. When you're talking about basically a little scrimmage, either 7-on-7, 9-on-7 sometimes where it's all running focused, or 11-on-11. Individuals are like, hey, you're going, the quarterbacks, you're throwing at targets or whatever they do in their individual drills. Who knows? But really weird. And if I was in a backup quarterback situation in a backup battle, I'd be pretty heated if I wasn't actually getting the reps to actually compete in that battle, which is kind of just what leaves us here, David. It's like, what's happening? Because we both are baseball fans too. If somebody was just held out randomly of a practice, you'd be like, that dude is getting moved. So with all of the moves that have happened, especially the last few days in the NFL, big or small, it's like, man, hey, is Taylor Heinicke about to get traded?
One thing I'm not going to accept is this answer from Greg Roman. When asked why Heinicke did not participate in team drills, Roman said, I got to ask about that. Yeah, whatever. That is never, ever going to fly with anybody, Greg Roman. That's insane. Let's not pretend that every single thing that occurs at practice is not meticulously set up well in advance. So, sorry, that's definitely not going to fly. I think with this situation, if you're holding a player out and it's before the trade deadline, that means there's some serious discussions being made about a trade of you going to a different destination. And I think when you look at this situation, we've said it multiple times in this offseason, especially with Trey Lance showing major improvement, that he's really more of the style of quarterback that Greg Roman likes to have as his backup, a guy that is mobile, a guy that can kind of, really run with the football and be able to attack you in a couple of different ways. Trey Lance has shown the ability to be that, and I think they want him to be that. And I think also they like Taylor Heinicke. I think they appreciate the fact that he's won games in this league, has started games in this league, but is not exactly the style or the prototype of quarterback that they would like to have as their backup. But that doesn't mean that he's not a quality backup, and there are plenty of teams out there that may entertain trying to add a quality backup. And of course, the Chargers traded for Taylor Heinicke from the Falcons, and it was a 6th-round pick. And as me and you were talking a little bit before the show, those back-end picks for Joe Ortiz has been really, really valuable with the type of players that they've been able to grab in 2 drafts.
Absolutely. I mean, even a late pick for this front office, you feel like those are valuable. And it was a conditional 6th-round pick that ended up being a 7th-round pick. So that is probably what a trade would look like. But yeah, I mean, it's weird because Greg Roman, saying, I'm not a doctor, I just play one on TV, and doing the whole kind of, shtick there. But like, it made it seem like he was not injured, right? And that he didn't know why. And I'm glad the reporters honestly pressed him on it a little bit. Like, hey, aren't you the offensive coordinator? Like, shouldn't you know why your quarterback can't go in? And
Obviously he
knows. He said back to them, we had a conversation about it. And then, that's how it went, basically. And it's just like, what does that even mean? So to me, I don't know if he's being held out because, a trade is potentially in the works. But what I would say is, if they're not planning on trading him right now, they absolutely should be, because we know that Trey Lance is going to be the backup quarterback. He's thoroughly outplayed Taylor Heinicke. And if you can get anything of value for your 3rd-string quarterback, you have to take it. And this is exactly the situation that Taylor Heinicke came from, right? They had Kirk Cousins. They drafted Michael Penix in the 1st round last year. Yep. And all of a sudden you have a dude who, has played in playoff games and is, started for an entire season sitting as your quarterback 3, and you want to see if you can get something out of it. So the Chargers should absolutely be doing that because of what we talked about with, you have multiple day 3 picks from last year that were good, and now you have the multiple day 3 picks this year who look like they're going to be hit on again. This is something that you should be entertaining to the nth degree. And I think the other part of it is we've talked about it. When has the Charger, knock on wood, obviously, but if you're getting down to your 3rd-string quarterback, things have already gone way too sideways anyways, where Taylor Heinicke is not going to save your season. A 3rd-string quarterback hasn't touched a field in meaningful snaps for the Chargers, and we were thinking back probably 20 years, so maybe 20-plus years. So I don't know. If you can get any, my thing is, David, if you can get any value for him, absolutely you should be trying to do it, because it's clear that he's not going to be QB2 on this roster, no matter what Greg Roman says, and even if he says it's still an open competition.
Not only is he not going to be QB2, but it doesn't seem like this is a roster that can nor should house 3 quarterbacks. I feel like they definitely need that depth in other areas of the roster. So yes, if you have a player that is a commodity that can be used around the league, then you should be inquiring about trying to get the most value that you can for him, because the Chargers are low on draft picks next year. And even if it's a late pick, they can turn that coal into a diamond.
Yeah, and we've already seen multiple kind of backup quarterbacks or guys that will potentially be backup quarterbacks get injured so far, and you just have other guys who are just playing, terribly. Obviously you go to the Dolphins, right? Or, have Zach Wilson, who's just been god-awful in the preseason. And then behind him's Quinn Ewers, who's a 6th or 7th round rookie. Maybe that's a situation where Tua's gotten hurt a lot. Maybe you want someone in a year you're desperate for your job to be able to come in there and run a system, right? And be able to be a professional quarterback. Taylor Heinicke can do all those things. But his trade value is probably pretty low right now based on the kind of, limited snaps. But it's just weird. They didn't give him a chance in the Hall of Fame game at all, right? He gets multiple series in the last couple of games, but really not an extended look in either of those games. Just been a weird situation. But I think for this Chargers roster, that is one of the things you have to think about, though. If there are really that many tough decisions and you're afraid of guys getting picked up after you cut them and added to another team, maybe there will be some guys that get traded, especially with only 6 draft picks next year, no compensatory picks coming. Maybe that is something we should keep an eye on as well. But last thing is, David, we have to talk about a route from Ladd McConkey. We talked about yesterday how he dominated practice on Monday. On Tuesday, he had a route that was so crazy that every single big Chargers reporter said, had their own take on it. And the entire sideline of the Chargers offense was going absolutely nuts. And all I have to say is poor Nehemiah Shelton didn't ask for any of that, but he's the guy that ended up being on the wrong end of the stick.
Yeah, he surely was. And I think obviously Daniel Popper does such an excellent job of describing everything. And he does describe this one in detail. He said he was playing outside, matched up with cornerback Nehemiah Shelton. McConkey faked an outside release off the line of scrimmage. Shelton bit on the fake. McConkey then cut to the inside as if he was running a slant route. Shelton tried to recover, but he was out of balance. McConkey had already separated, but he added a third move to the release, cutting back to the outside on a go route. Shelton fell over. McConkey was wide open down the right sideline, and quarterback Justin Herbert hit him in stride. And I think one of my favorite comments just from one of the players is Trey Harris saying, we were like, man, he just made that boy touch the earth.
Yeah, and it doesn't, according to everyone, all of the receivers were just going insane. Trey Harris also said it was the best route that anyone has run this training camp, but also said that Keenan Allen actually had one similar that was a close second, which I guess probably shouldn't be surprising.
Yeah.
This is what Eric Smith had to say about it. McConkey unleashed a route that left a Chargers defender in the dust as the wide receiver created nearly 10 yards of separation by the time he made the catch down the right sideline. He didn't even say the name, but the name came out. Chris Rim, another good day for Ladd McConkey, hit cornerback Nehemiah Shelton with a double move that made Shelton touch the turf. Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston celebrated loudly. Good to see Quentin Johnston back on the sideline, out there with the guys.
Yes.
Good sign for him. But man, poor Nehemiah Shelton. That's my main takeaway. And also, God, we wish we could see it. I know that's what you messaged
man,
me.
release the video.
Chargers, I plead with you. I beg you, release the tapes.
I know you record everything. We know you do. We know it's all recorded. Just let it out. Just let it out.
Release the tapes. Do what's
release
right.
it.
Nehemiah Shelton will understand if you release them because man,
you can blur him out. Just blur his face.
Yeah,
and
good. Nobody's ever gonna be ready for that. You could show every cornerback in the league Ladd doing that, and honestly, it might make Ladd even better because now everyone's expecting a third move to potentially come out of him when he's trying to get out of his break. But Ladd McConkey doing Ladd McConkey things, great to see. I can't wait to see what kind of season he puts together, especially if there's some protection and some upgraded protection with the potential of Mekhi Becton being back. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Since we'll be previewing the final preseason game, talking about the guys on the bubble for Friday's show, tomorrow I want to do a Chargers mailbag for those who didn't get to contribute to the buy or sell Tuesday to be able to get your guys' content on the show tomorrow. So hit us up at Locked On LAC on Twitter, Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page so you guys can get your fan mail question, and we might repurpose some buy or sells too because we had so many good buy or sells from Tuesday. But to make sure you guys don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. And also, thank you guys, as always. We are so close to real meaningful football, and thankfully we were able to bring you some better news today in an off season that's had, sudden retirements, firework accidents, and just a lot of uncertainty. You guys deserve the good news that we got today. But we'll be back to you guys tomorrow as the only daily Chargers podcast out there. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bulls.